The state of Wisconsin is ready to start implementing parts of its BadgerCare Plus waiver. This impacts adults without dependent children in the home, and it comes from a demonstration waiver, a Section 1115 waiver that was submitted by the prior administration in Wisconsin. We got federal approval about a year ago to move forward with some changes to our BadgerCare Plus program for adults without dependent children, and now we have a timeline for some of the implementation of those changes. Now, Wisconsin had asked for a lot of changes, and not all of those were approved, and not all of those are ready to be implemented. The parts that are ready to be implemented begin with monthly premiums. If you are an adult without dependent children in the home, and you are between 50% and 100% of the federal poverty level, a premium will attach to your BadgerCare Plus. This is a monthly premium of $8. It can be paid monthly or as a lump sum at the end of the year when you renew. It will be reduced if you show healthy behaviors, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And notices will go out November 1st, 2019 to individuals that this change is coming to be implemented February 1st, 2020 if the timeline that is laid out now in the state of Wisconsin is stuck to. And we'll talk about what's happening procedurally in just a moment. So the first change was premiums, and that's on track to be implemented in early 2020. The second change is a copay for using the emergency room if you are an adult without dependent children and it was not an emergency. If you go to the emergency room, it is an emergency, there is no charge. If you are an adult and you go to the emergency room and it was not an emergency, there is a copay of $8. It is up to the provider to collect that copay, and that again will attach February 1st, 2020. Finally is that healthy behaviors assessment we mentioned just a moment ago. It's a two-part assessment, and this is on track to be implemented February 1st, 2020 as well. The first is mandatory, the second is voluntary. The mandatory step is going through a risk assessment, a health risk assessment focused on substance use disorders. The voluntary survey is addressing alcohol use, tobacco use, and other healthy behaviors. Completing these steps, both of them could reduce that monthly premium almost by half in some instances. And again, for individuals that apply or renew after February 1st, 2020, this will be the new requirement. Now, things like work requirements and full coverage of residential substance use disorders for full BadgerCare and Medicaid members, that is not on this timeline of implementation. We need more conversations with the federal government on those parts of the Wisconsin waiver. Now, we said procedurally, this is the timeline, but remember when we had lame duck legislation passed in Wisconsin, as we knew there was a change in administration coming, there was a requirement set that the Joint Finance Committee has to review this full implementation plan as presented by the Department of Health Services. And we're in that 14-day passive review period right now that will be ending October 8th. Now, any Joint Finance Committee member can object to this plan. That would then trigger the need for a full meeting of the Joint Finance Committee. Assuming things go as planned by both the Department of Health Services and the administration, letters notifying members should be on track to go out November 1st for these three changes to be implemented February 1st, 2020, like we said. Now, there are still a lot of conversations happening about the potential impact of these changes and the logic behind them, requiring people to pay a premium, for example. A lot of low-income folks, we're talking 50% of the federal poverty level, which is very low income. Not a lot of people have bank accounts. Not a lot of people just have that money on hand to pay these premiums. Secondly, requiring that people make that determination in advance of if it's an emergency and should they go to the emergency room. There's a lot of gray area in mind. There is some merit in having people get used to using traditional primary care for their healthcare needs instead of the emergency room, but it's not clear if you want to encourage someone to have to make that decision on their own if their health condition they're experiencing, a sore stomach, a headache, a cut, if that's severe enough to warrant an emergency and therefore a payment. Potentially, some people might say they're just not going to go, they don't want to get charged. Or they might think this rule attaches to people it never was intended to attach to, because there's nuance to that. Would a mother think that this rule attached to a child and therefore not take the child to the doctor thinking she would have to pay if she didn't have the money available, when of course this rule, it does not impact children. So there's some unintended consequences, and we're going to just have to stay tuned and keep really close notes on how that happens. You can read the letter that went before the Joint Finance Committee that includes that implementation plan as submitted by the Department of Health Services. We will keep you up to date as we learn more about this process and these implementation dates. You can stay tuned by subscribing to this channel and otherwise find us at healthwatchwisconsin.org.